Well, welcome back to Mountain Gym Card Collectibles. I hope you're having a great day. So, I've noticed a few videos about hobby positivity lately. For the sports card hobby. I'm not going to get into those videos. Where they're kind of comparing, some different channels, different, kind of celebrities and, the YouTube sports card community. But then, if you're into sports cards, I'm sure that you've noticed TCG Pokemon cards have been somewhat eclipsing sports cards. And, for me, I can go to my local sports card shop like on a Saturday when my local shop is having a Pokemon weekly tournament. And you can really, get an eye-opening reason why sports cards just aren't as popular with younger people as, say, the TCG market. Now, when you look at sports cards, it's not like they used to be. When I look at sports cards, my interest really peaked in the mid-'80s, they were affordable. I could compare them to, say, buying packs of Pokemon cards nowadays, The affordability is there. And I know that a lot of Pokemon channels are always crying about scalpers, marking up their Pokemon, whatever. I'm guilty. I've bought some sealed products of Pokemon, sold it. I tend to sell more singles than sealed products. I've noticed that lately. But anyway, so you can go ahead and purchase awesome Pokemon cards, and you have a chance, of actually not spending a ton of money doing it. And when you look at the sports card hobby, you can hang out like at my local sports card shop, and you'll see some people coming in buying sports cards, usually, older middle-aged men. But for the most part, like all the young people are buying either Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, maybe One Piece, they just walk right by the sports cards. Not interested. And, you have to kind of ask yourself, well, why aren't they interested? You can go to the Pokemon TCG, and here we are, the ex-Pokemon site for TCG. And it's a much different feeling, like look at this. Here's a card, and the difference between, say, this Pokemon TCG site that they're showing, like this is a trainer card, for Team Rocket, is, guess what? The people who are looking at this actually know that they have an opportunity to purchase this card at a price that's affordable, that they can rip packs and not like lose all their money, And I can understand that, growing up, opening sports cards is I was in the same boat, Not only that, but, here we are, some Pokemon games. They have these Pokemon tournaments where, obviously it's not about slabbing up the card and using PSA to sell the card to get as much money as you can out of the card. These people are enjoying their cards, which when like here's two more cards that, they have a great chance of hitting and finding at an affordable price. Here's another one. That's what sports cards used to be. Here's another Team Rocket, Mewtwo or Muto. I just sold a Muto. I have one going out today, for an illustration card. People really like these illustration cards. Here's Orbeetle. I like the illustration cards. And I can get into them at a fraction of what it costs to get into a lot of sports cards. All right. So, when you look at the market and you look at, say, kids doing TCG over sports cards, well, I'm not a parent. But if I was a parent, I'd prefer to have my kid doing Pokemon over sports cards. Why? Well, let's be honest here. If your kid is involved in sports cards, they want the good cards, just like they could get with Pokemon. Here I am at the Topps site on X. They're going to want something like this. This Shohei Ohtani, first Dodgers home run, 1 out of 5. Okay, 1 out of 5. All right, so right there. This is exclusive. This is exclusive for people who have a lot of cash and a lot of money that they can afford to chase this stuff with. This hobby isn't meant for everybody. I mean, to me, it's almost like, do you want your 9 or 10-year-old kid going to sports cards and basically almost going into an early college debt? I mean, by the time they hit college, they could be $80,000 into debt with their sports card hobby. And that's the honest truth here. I think it's just getting harder and harder to sell young people on sports cards because it's really an exclusive hobby. If you want good cards. Yeah, if you want the trashy Top Series 1 that's worthless, which I call toilet paper, hey, you can have, but those kids don't care about stuff like that. They want stuff that's awesome, Stuff like this 1 out of 10. But the reality is if you want stuff like this in the sports card hobby, you basically have to go into massive amounts of debt. Almost like a college debt. When I graduated from college, I owed, $60,000? Oh, but the problem with sports cards is, if you want to get in the hobby and have nice stuff, you are going to likely go into deep, heavy debt because it's all about the gambling aspect. It's all about the breakers, It's like, hey, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old kid, how about you want to jump into being an adult, 8, 9, 10 years early with this hobby? Because that's basically what it's going to force you to do. And you have to ask yourself, do you want to, be part of, do you want to follow Jeff Wilson? If I had a 10-year-old kid, I wouldn't want him even knowing Jeff Wilson's name, and, the way that this man acts. And that's what I mean is really when you start to look at the hobby itself, it is as ugly as can be. It really is. It's just like, it's not the Pokemon where they're showing some cards where you actually have an opportunity of hitting, and finding. It's always these, one of ones where you're going to have to go into heavy debt to where, maybe by the time a 10-year-old kid is 18, maybe he is $80,000 into debt in his hobby. That's just it. Dad's $80,000 debt in the hobby as well. Why? Because they just want some good cards. And then, the thing about, the sports card hobby over the Pokemon hobby is the fact that, or even TCG in general, is the fact that you always have these millionaire, billionaire types always talking down to everybody, kind of like Jeff Wilson does, The thing about the TCG hobby is you can go, like I said, to the local sports card shop where I go to on a Saturday, and you're just looking at kids, hanging out with kids, having fun. I never see that with sports cards. There's never any sports card tournament, to go to at a sports card shop where, sports cards enthusiasts are actually, enjoying themselves, and it's just like, I wouldn't want my kid to be any part of, Michael Rubin's quest to become a trillionaire, and using everyone and everything to take advantage of in the process, I do like some Topps cards, don't get me wrong, but there's just, like say this Shohei Ohtani, Cactus Jack, but it's only meant for exclusive people. And when you get into Pokemon, it really isn't just meant for exclusive people, But then, you have these higher ups like Michael Rubin, who's taken over, Tops and Fanatics, and we're living by his code of, you have to have lots and lots of money to be in this hobby, to work yourself to death if you have a job, it's a nightmare. It's almost like if you wanted to like give your child a bad drug addiction early on in life, get them into sports cards because they will go heavy into gambling, heavy into debt. I mean, it's not the way it should be. And I can understand why the numbers at GemRate are the way they are, Let's grade some Pokemon. Why? Well, they probably rip those out of packs, I mean, hey, and they probably didn't spend a ton of money doing it. Why not? I mean, there is value there. But then, you also have the ugly side of this hobby as well, to where I go, I think you're just going to be happier doing your thing at the sports card shop, doing those tournaments, every Saturday, playing with your friends, over getting involved in the type of people that are the higher ups in sports cards, meaning people like Backyard Breaks, and, everything that, the Backyard Breaks crew has, dumped upon the sports card community. Grant Telford, talks of, underage girls the way he does, and the fact that PSA, welcomes him with open arms, there's just a lot of things about this hobby that if I had a child, I would not want them to even know anything about this stuff, to be quite honest. Especially, someone like Grant Telford, I mean, that's just it. Is the thing about the Pokemon hobby is, yeah, there are a lot of, scammy types on whatnot, not very good. I wouldn't recommend your child go to whatnot and purchase Pokemon because they're likely going to get scammed, or, there's just kind of some different, sellers on there. But overall, it's still cleaner than anything to do with sports cards. Sports cards, it's almost like an adult-only hobby for people 21 years and older, for people who are willing to jump into a pool of massive debt, sink into it, never come up, you know what I mean? And the thing about sports cards too is there's just so many, other factors that go along with it. The PSA thing, you always have to spend lots and lots of money on your sports cards because it's all about the money. I mean, I get a lot of comments where it's just all about the money. You begin to question, is that what this hobby is truly all about? Is just getting your nice card graded and then selling it to someone else for as much money as you can? Because that's not much fun. I mean, if you're a 17, 16, 15-year-old kid, you try selling that to them. They're going to be back at the Pokemon tournament every Saturday. You know what I mean? So I can understand why sports cards are being eclipsed, especially the sports card community is basically being eclipsed by TCG. Here we see, PSA just really pumping sports cards, Why do you think they're doing that over TCG? Because they don't have to pump TCG. TCG's numbers just keep blowing up. So when it comes to sports cards, both communities, the reality is, whether it's Golden, another big higher up in the sports card community, it feels like a mountain that most people can't climb. The sports card world of 2025, especially with the way the economy is going. What does the sports card community have to do to attract basically its bread and butter being, young people? That's the way it always used to be, and those young people have moved on for the most part, I mean, and I can understand why. I mean, I told you, if I had a kid, which I don't have any kids, I would tell them, do not get into sports cards. I'd be buying them packs of Pokemon, and maybe some Yu-Gi-Oh. Maybe there's a bunch of penny cards out of the Pokemon, but at least you're going to get that illustration card and have a great chance on one of the best, current Pokemon cards on the market, which Honestly, if I had a kid and he wants sports cards, you think I'm going to buy him some Topps Mercury cards, or these high end Panini cards, National Treasures, this and that. And then you have all these just horrible people involved in the trade. I mean, it's just scumbag after scumbag in the sports card realm. I mean, all we gotta do is wave the backyard breaks flag, and then put PSA below it. I mean, it's just scumbag central here. And then you, of course, have Michael Rubin. And I mean, do you want to be part of his plan? What's being part of the Michael Rubin plan? Well, letting the guy take all your money so that he can become a trillionaire and live up to his trillionaire dream. And it's like, no, And then there's always Ken Golden and, all these special auction services, for sports cards. And, it's just such an exclusive, type hobby that I can understand why the sports card shop is the way it is. I mean, I'll see sports card guys walk in and they're the most unhappiest guys in the world. Why is that? Oh, another $300 box that they're going to, pull a bunch of trash out of and not get what they want. But then you look in the back of the room and the Pokemon tournament guys are just living it up, having as much fun as they can, not worried about money, smiling, throwing stuff in the air. And I just go, what is going on here? That's what's going on. Let's face it, the sports card community has turned into a bunch of scumbags. I mean, I don't know when exactly we can mark down the exact point that it morphed into scumbag zone. But something has to change. And I think what has to change is just the people involved here, I mean, it'd be nice if Backyard Breaks would just hit the road, wouldn't it? I mean, it'd be nice if Michael Rubin would hit the road as well. And while they're all hitting the road, let's get Ken Golden on that bus too, And there's so many more, that are just bad looks for the hobby, to where you go, yep, this is why it's getting eclipsed. For good reason. I love sports cards. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm always selling sports cards. I'm always buying sports cards. I'm always talking about sports cards. I'm always listening to people talk about sports cards. It's my interest. But it would be nice if we could just clean it up and make it into a cleaner hobby like it used to. Anyway, I'm not sure what your opinion is on all this, but leave some comments. Thank you to my subscribers. You're the reason why I keep doing this every day. If you're a viewer and you haven't subscribed, just subscribe. It's 100% free. Anyway, hope you have a great day. I'm out of here. Bye.